"Father, those two boys sleeping in the trash look just like me," Kael said, pointing at the small children huddled on an old mattress on the sidewalk. Damien Brooks stopped, following his young son's gaze. Two children, seemingly of the same age, slept curled up between sacks of refuse, their clothes dirty and torn, their bare feet scarred and bruised. Before we begin this touching story, please tell us in the comments below which city you're watching from, and hit the like button to keep us company. The businessman felt a knot in his chest at the sight, but he tried to pull Kael's hand to continue walking to the car. He had just picked him up from the British International School in Lagos, where he studied, and as was customary, they were returning home driving through the city center. It was a route Damien usually avoided, always preferring to pass through the more affluent neighborhoods, but heavy traffic and an accident on the main avenue had forced them to traverse that poorer, more deteriorated area. The narrow streets were teeming with homeless people, street vendors, and children playing amidst the garbage piled on the sidewalks. However, the boy pulled free with surprising strength and ran toward the small children, completely ignoring his father's protests. Damien followed, concerned not only by the reaction Kael might have seeing such misery up close, but also by the dangers that region represented. There were constant reports of robberies, drug trafficking, and violence. Their expensive clothes and Damien's gold watch on his wrist made them easy targets. Kael knelt beside the filthy mattress and observed the faces of the two deeply sleeping children, exhausted by life on the streets. One had light brown hair, wavy and shiny despite the dust, just like his own, and the other was dark-skinned with slightly darker complexions. But both had facial features very similar to his, the same arched and expressive eyebrows, the same oval and delicate face, even the same dimple on the chin that Kael had inherited from his deceased mother. Damien approached slowly with a growing unease that soon transformed into something close to panic. There was something deeply unsettling about that resemblance, something that went far beyond a simple coincidence. It was as if he was seeing three versions of the same creature at different moments in their lives. "Kael, let's go right now." "We can't stay here," Damien said, trying to lift his son with firmness, though unable to tear his gaze from the sleeping children, from that impossible vision. "They're just like me, Papa." "Look at their eyes," Kael insisted, as one of the little ones slowly stirred and opened his eyes with difficulty. Still drowsy, he revealed two green eyes identical to Kael's, not only in color, but also in their almond shape, the intensity of their gaze, and that natural sparkle Damien knew so well. The child got scared seeing strangers nearby, and quickly woke his brother with gentle yet urgent taps on the shoulder. Both startled awake, embracing, visibly trembling, not only from cold, but from pure instinctive fear. Damien noticed that both had exactly the same curls as Kael, only in different shades, and the same body posture, the same way of moving, even the same way of breathing when they were nervous. "Please don't hurt us," said the light-haired one, instinctively placing himself in front of his younger brother, a protective gesture Damien recognized immediately with a shudder. It was exactly the same way Kael protected smaller classmates at school when a bully tried to intimidate them. The same defensive movement, the same brave stance, despite visible fear. The businessman felt his legs tremble violently and had to lean against a brick wall to keep from falling. The resemblance between the three children was striking, terrifying, impossible to attribute to chance. Every gesture, every expression, every body movement was identical. The dark-haired child opened his eyes completely, and Damien almost fainted on the spot. They were Kael's same piercing green eyes, but there was something even more disturbing. The expression of curiosity mixed with caution, the particular way of frowning when confused or scared, even the slight shrinking back when feeling fear. Everything was exactly what he saw in his son daily. All three had the same stature, the same slender physique, and together they looked like perfect reflections in a fragmented mirror. Damien held on tighter to the wall, feeling the world spin around him. "What are your names?" Kael asked with the innocence of his years, sitting on the dirty sidewalk, not caring about soiling his expensive school uniform. "I'm Declan," replied the light-haired one, relaxing as he realized that this child, his age, posed no threat, unlike the adults who usually chased them away from public spaces. "And he's Bennett, my younger brother," he added, tenderly pointing to the dark-haired boy beside him. Damien felt the world spin even faster, as if the ground were disappearing beneath his feet. Those were exactly the names he and Elena had chosen for the other two children, in case the complicated pregnancy resulted in triplets. Names written on a paper carefully kept in the nightstand drawer, discussed during long sleepless nights. Names he had never mentioned to Kael or anyone after his wife's death. It was an absolutely impossible, terrifying coincidence that defied all logic and reason. "You live here on the street?" Kael continued, conversing with the children as if it were the most natural thing in the world, brushing Declan's dirty hand with a familiarity that further disturbed Damien. "We don't have a real home," Bennett said in a weak, hoarse voice, probably from crying so much or asking for help. "The auntie who was taking care of us said she no longer had money to support us and brought us here in the early morning. She said someone would appear to help us." Damien approached even more slowly, desperately trying to process what he was seeing and hearing without losing his sanity. The three not only seemed to be the same age and have the same physical features, but they also shared the same automatic, unconscious gestures. All three scratched the back of their right ear in the same way when they were nervous. All three bit their lower lip at the same spot when they hesitated before speaking. All three blinked in the same way when they were concentrated. These were small, imperceptible details to people, but devastating to a father who knew every gesture of his son. "How long have you been here on the street alone?" Damien asked, his voice completely choked, kneeling beside Kael on the filthy sidewalk, disregarding his expensive suit. "Auntie Nadia brought us here in the early morning when no one was on the street and said she would return the next day with food and clean clothes, but she hasn't come back yet." Damien felt his blood run cold, as if an electric shock ran through his entire body. Nadia. That name resonated in his mind like a deafening thunder, awakening memories he had tried to bury for years. Nadia was Elena's younger sister, a troubled and unstable woman who had completely disappeared from family life right after Elena's traumatic delivery and death, a woman Elena had often spoken of, mentioning her serious financial difficulties, drug addiction problems, and abusive relationships. A sister who had borrowed money innumerable times during Elena's pregnancy, always with different excuses, and then had disappeared without a trace or address. A woman who had been present at the hospital throughout Elena's labor, asking strange questions about medical procedures and what would happen to the babies in case of complications. Kael looked at his father with green eyes full of genuine tears, gently touching Declan's arm. "Papa, they are very hungry. Look how thin and weak they are. We can't leave them here alone." Damien looked more closely at the two children in the twilight and saw that they were indeed severely malnourished. Their worn and mended clothes hung from their fragile bodies like rags. Their faces were pale and sunken, with deep dark circles, their eyes dull and tired, revealed days without adequate food or restful sleep. Beside them, on the filthy mattress, there was barely an almost empty water bottle and a torn plastic bag with remains of stale, moldy bread. Their small hands were dirty and injured, with cuts and scratches, probably from rummaging through garbage looking for something edible. "Were you able to eat anything today?" Damien asked, kneeling completely to the children's level, trying to control the growing emotion in his voice. "Yesterday morning, a man who works at the bakery on the corner gave us an old sandwich to share," Bennett said with downcast eyes, ashamed of their situation. "But today we got nothing. Some people pass by, look at us with pity, but pretend not to see us and walk away quickly." Kael immediately pulled out a whole package of filled biscuits from his expensive school backpack and offered it to the children with a spontaneous and generous gesture that filled Damien with paternal pride and existential terror at the same time. "You can eat everything. My papa always buys me more, and at home we have plenty of delicious food." Declan and Bennett looked directly at Damien, asking for permission with big, hopeful eyes, a natural gesture of politeness and respect that contrasted dramatically with the desperate and degrading situation they were in. Someone had taught good manners and values to these abandoned children. Damien nodded, still desperately trying to comprehend what was happening in front of him. What force of destiny had placed these children in his path? They shared the biscuits with a delicacy and care that deeply moved Damien's heart. They carefully broke each biscuit in half, They always offered one to each other first before eating. They chewed slowly, savoring each bit as if it were a real feast. There was no hurry, no greed, only pure gratitude. "Thank you very much, truly," they said in unison. And Damien had the absolute certainty that he had heard those voices before, not just once or twice, but thousands of times. It was not only the childish, high-pitched tone, but the specific intonation, the particular rhythm of speaking, the exact way of pronouncing each word. Everything was absolutely identical to Kael's voice. It was like listening to recordings of his son at different times in his life. As he watched the three children together sitting on the dirty ground, the resemblances became increasingly evident and terrifying, impossible to ignore or rationalize. It wasn't just the striking physical similarity, the unconscious and automatic gestures, the particular way of tilting their head slightly to the right when paying attention to something, even the specific way of smiling, showing their upper teeth first. Everything was identical in every detail. Kael seemed to have found two exact versions of himself living in miserable conditions in the world. "Do you know anything about who your real parents are?" Damien asked, trying to keep his voice controlled and casual, though feeling his heart beat so erratically that it hurt in his chest. "Auntie Nadia always said that our mother died when we were born in the hospital," Declan explained, repeating the words as if they were a lesson memorized and repeated 1,000 times, and that our father couldn't take care of us because he already had another small child to raise alone and wasn't in a position to. Damien felt his heart accelerate violently, pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. Elena had indeed died during the complicated delivery, losing a lot of blood and going into shock, and Nadia had mysteriously disappeared right after the funeral, claiming she couldn't bear to stay in the city where her sister had died so young. But now everything made terrifying and devastating sense. Nadia had not only fled from pain and sad memories, she had taken something precious with her, someone with her, 2 children with her. "And do you remember anything from when you were babies?" Damien insisted, his hands visibly trembling as he obsessively observed every detail of the children's angelic faces, looking for more resemblances, more proof. "We hardly remember anything," Bennett said, shaking his head sadly. "Auntie Nadia always said that we were born along with another brother on the same day, but that he stayed with our father because he was stronger and healthier, and we went with her because we needed special care." Kael opened his green eyes in a way Damien knew very well, that expression of sudden and terrifying understanding that appeared when he solved a difficult problem or understood something complex. "Papa, they're talking about me, right? I am the brother who stayed with you because I was stronger, and they are my brothers who went with Auntie." Damien had to lean on the rough wall with both hands to keep from completely fainting. The pieces of the most terrible puzzle of his life fit together brutally and definitively before his eyes. Elena's extremely complicated pregnancy, the always high blood pressure and constant threats of premature birth, the traumatic labor, the severe hemorrhages, the desperate minutes in which doctors tirelessly fought to save both mother and children. He vaguely remembered the doctors speaking in urgent tones about serious complications, about difficult medical decisions, about saving whoever could be saved. He remembered Elena slowly dying in his arms, whispering broken words that at the time he couldn't understand, but that now had a terrible meaning. And he remembered Nadia perfectly, always present in the hospital during those tense days, always nervous and restless, always asking detailed questions about medical procedures and about what exactly would happen to the children in case of serious complications or the mother's death. "Declan, Bennett," Damien said, his voice completely trembling and choked as tears began to roll freely down his face without trying to hide them. "Would you like to come home, have a warm shower, and eat something delicious and nutritious?" The 2 children looked at each other with the natural and learned distrust of those who had been forced by cruel circumstances to understand in the worst possible way that not all adults had good intentions toward them. They had spent entire days on the dangerous streets, exposed to all kinds of risks, violence, and exploitation. "You won't hurt us later, will you?" Declan asked in a small, frightened voice that revealed both desperate hope and pure, irrational fear. "Never, I promise," Kael replied immediately, even before his father could open his mouth, getting up quickly and extending both small hands towards Declan and Bennett. "My papa is very good and loving. He takes good care of me every day, and he can take care of you too, like a real family." Damien watched, fascinated by the absolutely impressive naturalness with which Kael spoke to the children, as if he had known them intimately for years. There was an inexplicable and powerful connection between the three, something that went far beyond the astonishing physical resemblance. It was as if they recognized each other instinctively, as if there was an emotional and spiritual bond between them that completely transcended logic and reason. "All right then," Bennett finally said, slowly getting up and carefully taking the torn plastic bag with the few miserable objects they possessed in the world. "But if you are bad to us, or try to hurt us, we know how to run fast and hide." "We will never be bad," Damien assured with absolute sincerity, watching with a heavy heart how Bennett carefully put the remains of moldy bread into the bag, even though he already knew they would eat something infinitely better. It was pure survival instinct, characteristic of someone who intimately knows real and devastating hunger. As they walked slowly through the crowded streets towards the luxury SUV, Damien noticed that practically everyone who passed by looked at them fixedly, stopped, murmured among themselves, and pointed discreetly. It was impossible not to perceive that they looked like identical triplets. Some more curious passers-by stopped completely. They made admiring comments about the impressive resemblance. Others even secretly took photos with their phones. Kael firmly held Declan's hand and Declan Bennett's, as if it were something completely instinctive and natural, as if they had always walked exactly like that through the streets of life. "Papa," Kael suddenly said, stopping abruptly in the middle of the crowded sidewalk and looking directly into his father's eyes. "I always dreamed that I had brothers who looked exactly like me. I dreamed that we played together every day, that they knew the same things I know, that we were never alone or sad. And now they are really here, as if by magic." Damien felt a shiver run through his entire body upon hearing Kael's words. During the drive to the car, he observed every movement of the three with an obsessive attention that bordered on paranoia. The way Declan helped Bennett walk when he stumbled was identical to the way Kael always helped the more fragile or needy people. The way Bennett carefully held the plastic bag with his miserable belongings was exactly like the extreme care Kael showed with his favorite toys, or with objects he considered important. Even the natural cadence of their steps was perfectly synchronized, as if the three had meticulously rehearsed that walk for years. Damien noticed that all three first placed their right foot when stepping onto the sidewalk, that all slightly swung their left arm when walking, that all instinctively looked from side to side before crossing any street. These were small details that might go unnoticed by a casual observer, but that were devastatingly significant to a father who intimately knew every movement of his son. When they finally arrived at the black Lexus SUV parked on the busy corner, Declan and Bennett stopped abruptly in front of the vehicle with wide-open eyes of admiration and amazement. "Is this beautiful car really yours, sir?" Declan asked, reverently touching the shiny, immaculate bodywork. "It's my papa's." Kael replied with the naturalness typical of someone who had grown up surrounded by luxury. "We always go in it to school, to the club, to the mall, and to all the places we need to go." Damien intently observed the children's genuine reaction upon seeing the authentic beige leather interior and the gleaming gold accents. There was no trace of envy, greed, or resentment in their innocent eyes, only pure curiosity and respectful admiration. Bennett ran his dirty little hand over the soft seats with extreme reverence, as if touching something sacred and untouchable. "Never in my life have I traveled in such a beautiful and fragrant car," he whispered, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "It looks like one of those cars on TV where famous rich people ride." Throughout the silent journey to the imposing mansion located in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, Damien could not take his eyes off the rearview mirror for a single second. The three children conversed animatedly in the back seat, as if they were old friends reuniting after a long and painful separation. Kael enthusiastically pointed out tourist spots and important sights of the city through the window. Declan asked intelligent and perceptive questions about absolutely everything he saw on the way, and Bennett listened with concentrated attention, occasionally making profound comments that revealed an impressive and disturbing maturity for a child of their age. "That tall building you see over there is where my papa works every day," Kael explained, enthusiastically pointing to the glass-mirrored skyscraper. "He has a big company that builds beautiful houses for people who have money." "And are you going to work there with him when you grow up?" Declan asked with genuine curiosity. "I don't know yet. Sometimes I think about being a doctor to help sick children who don't have money to pay for treatment." Damien almost lost control of the steering wheel upon hearing those words. Doctor had been exactly the dream he himself had passionately cherished in his childhood, long before being forced by family circumstances to inherit the family's lucrative businesses. It was an old and deep longing he had never shared with Kael, because he didn't want to artificially influence his future professional decisions. "I also want to be a doctor when I grow up," Bennett suddenly said with surprising determination, "to take good care of poor people who don't have money to pay for consultations or expensive medicines. I want to be a children's teacher." Declan completed with the same conviction. To patiently teach children who never had the opportunity to really study, to read, write, and do sums well, even if they are poor. Tears burned intensely in Damien's eyes. The three children had noble and altruistic dreams, totally aligned with the ethical and moral values he had strived to instill in Kael since he was little. It was as if they shared not only physical appearance, but also character, principles, and even their deepest dreams. When they finally arrived at the majestic mansion with its extensive, perfectly manicured gardens and imposing classical architecture, Declan and Bennett froze completely at the main entrance. The three-story house, with its enormous white columns and gleaming glass windows, seemed like a true royal palace in the eyes of two children who had slept so many nights outdoors on the city's dangerous streets. "Do you really live here in this giant house?" Bennett asked in a voice almost inaudible from astonishment. "It's very big and beautiful. It must have like many different rooms. It has 22 rooms in total." Kael corrected with a proud and innocent smile. "But we actually only use some. The rest always remain closed because it's too big for just two people." Mama Rosa, the experienced housekeeper who had dedicatedly cared for the house for many years, immediately appeared at the main door with her always elegant and impeccably professional demeanor. Seeing Damien arrive unexpectedly with three absolutely identical children, her expression changed from interest to total shock. She knew Kael intimately since he was a newborn, and the physical resemblance was so incredible that she dropped the heavy keys in her hand with a clatter. "God have mercy," she murmured under her breath, quickly crossing herself 3 times. "Mr. Damien, what impossible story is this? How can there be 3 identical Kaels?" "Mama Rosa, I'll explain everything calmly later," Damien said, rushing into the house with the 3 children. "For now, I urgently need you to prepare a hot bath for Declan and Bennett and something nutritious and delicious for them to eat in abundance." The woman, still completely bewildered by that surreal situation, immediately resumed her maternal and protective instinct. She observed the 2 visibly malnourished children with genuine compassion and practical concern. "These little ones urgently need specialized medical attention, Mr. Damien. They are so thin, pale, and full of wounds. It looks like they haven't eaten well in weeks." Damien nodded in silence, though his mind was focused on much more urgent and complex matters. He desperately needed to confirm his growing suspicions before making any definitive decision that could affect everyone's future. While Mama Rosa carefully led Declan and Bennett to the spacious bathroom on the ground floor, Kael remained thoughtful beside his father in the luxurious living room, staring fixedly out the window towards where his possible brothers were bathing. "Papa, they are my real brothers, aren't they?" he asked with the seriousness of someone who already instinctively knew the answer. Damien knelt in front of his son, gently took his small shoulders, and looked directly into his bright green eyes. "Kael, it's very possible, my son, but I need absolute scientific certainty before saying anything definitive. I am already completely sure," Kael affirmed with unbreakable conviction, placing his small hand on his chest. "I feel it right here. It's as if a very important part of me that had always been missing has finally returned home." Damien hugged him tightly, trying to contain the avalanche of emotions that threatened to completely overflow. Kael's pure intuition perfectly matched all the accumulating evidence, but Damien needed irrefutable scientific proof before accepting such an impactful and transformative reality. When Declan and Bennett finally emerged from the long bath, dressed in Kael's clean clothes, which fit them perfectly in every detail, the physical resemblance became even more evident and shocking. With clean, shiny, and carefully combed hair and angelic faces free from the grime of the streets, the three children looked like identical reflections in perfect mirrors. It was impossible to distinguish significant differences between them, except for the slightly different shades of their hair. Mama Rosa then appeared with a large tray full of nutritious sandwiches, assorted fresh fruits, cold whole milk, and still warm homemade biscuits. The children began to eat with impeccable manners, but Damien noted with a heavy heart how they devoured absolutely everything with desperate speed, the primitive instinct of chronic hunger still present and dominant. "Slowly, my little angels," Mama Rosa said with genuine maternal affection. "There's plenty more delicious food in the kitchen. You don't need to rush. You can eat all you want." "Sorry, Mama Rosa," Declan said, ashamed, stopping immediately. "It's just been a long time since we ate well. We forgot how to behave." "You don't need to apologize, my dear child. Eat peacefully and calmly. This house is yours now, too." Damien strategically took advantage of that calm moment to make some extremely urgent and important phone calls. First, he contacted his trusted private doctor, Dr. Harlan, a renowned and respected pediatrician who had carefully monitored Kael since his birth and knew the family's entire medical history. "Dr. Harlan, I need a very urgent personal favor. Could you come to my house tonight? It's a very delicate medical situation involving some children." "Of course, Damien. Did something serious happen to Kael?" "Kael is perfectly fine, but I urgently need detailed DNA tests on 3 children, including him." There was a long and significant pause on the other end of the line. "DNA? Damien, what complicated situation is this? I prefer to explain everything personally when you arrive. Can you bring the complete kit for material collection?" "Yes, no problem. I'll be there in a maximum of 2 hours." The second call was directed to his trusted personal lawyer, Attorney Vance, a recognized specialist in family law and child custody issues. "Vance, I urgently need your specialized help with an extremely delicate family matter." "What happened, Damien?" "It's possible that I have 2 other biological children besides Kael. Children who were, let's say, separated from him irregularly at birth." "Separated irregularly?" "Damien, you're making me very worried and confused. It's a long and complicated story. I urgently need to know what my legal rights are as a biological father and how I should proceed correctly. I'll come first thing tomorrow morning. Don't do anything absolutely rash until we discuss it in detail." While Damien made these calls in his study, the 3 children played harmoniously in the luxurious living room, as if they had been intimate siblings for years. Kael proudly showed off his expensive toys and collections. Declan taught creative games he had learned in his hard life on the street, and Bennett told fantastic stories he invented on the spot. The natural synchronicity between the 3 was at once disturbing and beautiful to observe. They laughed with the same tone, gestured identically when speaking. They even breathed at the same rhythm when they were concentrated. "Kael," Damien said, calmly returning to the living room after finishing the calls, "I need to ask Declan and Bennett some important questions. Can you help your papa?" "Of course, Papa. You can ask anything you want." Damien sat comfortably on the rug next to the children, trying to maintain a casual and relaxed tone, despite the crucial importance of the information he desperately sought. "Declan, can you remember anything specific from when you were small babies? Any detail, no matter how small?" "Auntie Nadia always said that we were born in a very big and famous hospital," Declan said thoughtfully, frowning in concentration. "She said it was very difficult and dangerous, that she had to make difficult choices about who to save first." "Choose who to save," Damien repeated, feeling his heart pound violently. "Yes, she said our mother was very sick and weak and that the head doctor said he couldn't save everyone at the same time. So, he had to decide to save us." Damien felt the world spin uncontrollably around him. This version perfectly matched his fragmented and painful memories of the hospital that terrible night. He vividly remembered the doctors speaking in grave tones about difficult decisions, about emergency priorities, about saving whoever was possible under those circumstances. And do you know exactly which hospital you were born in? St. Nicholas Hospital. Bennett replied immediately, without hesitation. Auntie Nadia always took us there when we were sick or needed medicine. Damien almost fainted. St. Nicholas Hospital was the same private and expensive hospital where Kael had been born, where Elena had fought for her life and finally died. A hospital exclusively frequented by the city's economic elite. It made no logical sense that supposedly abandoned children would receive regular medical attention there, unless a legitimate and documented family connection existed. And Auntie Nadia, what was she physically like? Do you remember her well? She looked a lot like our real mother, Declan said thoughtfully. She had very long, straight black hair, big, dark eyes, and always smelled strongly of cigarette mixed with sweet perfume. Damien felt his blood run cold. It was a perfect and detailed description of Nadia, Elena's younger sister. Every detail matched his memories of his troubled sister-in-law. But she was always very nervous and agitated. Bennett continued with a disturbing seriousness, especially when she saw police on the street or when someone unknown asked us questions. What kind of questions exactly made her uncomfortable? About who our real father was, about our family, about where we came from. Declan explained in detail. She always told us never to talk about those important things with strangers because it was dangerous. Damien immediately understood that Nadia lived in constant terror of being discovered and exposed. The behavior described by the children was absolutely typical of someone hiding something extremely serious with severe legal consequences and the possibility of imprisonment. And were you really happy? Were you happy living with Auntie Nadia? The two children looked at each other with a deep and mature sadness that shattered Damien's heart. It was an expression of pain that no child should know so intimately. We loved her because she took care of us, Bennett said diplomatically, choosing his words carefully. But she always said that taking care of us was very difficult and tiring, that she had sacrificed her whole life for us. And sometimes she disappeared for many days in a row. Declan completed, his voice choked. She would leave us completely alone at home or with unknown neighbors who didn't even know our names properly. Damien felt an intense anger progressively grow in his chest. Anger at Nadia for having lied and manipulated the situation. Anger at himself for not having sought more information. Anger at the cruel fate that had brutally separated his children. But at the same time, he felt an immense and liberating relief for having found them alive and relatively well. "Papa," Kael suddenly said, interrupting his father's turbulent thoughts. "Can we stay together forever now? Declan and Bennett can live here in our house with us like a real family." Damien looked deeply into the three pairs of absolutely identical green eyes, fixed on him with expectation and hope, awaiting a definitive answer that would change all their lives forever and irreversibly. The responsibility was crushing and terrifying, but the certainty growing in his heart was absolutely unshakable. "If you really want to stay, and if all the examinations confirm what I firmly believe they will confirm, you three will never be separated again, not even for a single day," he said with solemnity. Damien's words resonated in the luxurious living room like a sacred promise, and the three children instinctively embraced with overwhelming emotional force, forming a perfect circle of pure and unexpected joy. Declan and Bennett had begun to cry copiously, but these were crystal-clear tears of relief and renewed hope, not of sadness or despair. Kael took their small hands with protective firmness, as if to physically guarantee that they would never be separated again, as if he could prevent cruel fate from tearing them apart once more. Damien contemplated that moving scene, his heart literally overflowing with contradictory and overwhelming emotions. On the one hand, he felt an indescribable happiness at having found the children he believed lost forever since the traumatic moment of birth. On the other, a growing and paralyzing anxiety invaded him. How to explain that impossible situation to the outside world, to conservative society, to the competent authorities? How to justify the sudden appearance of two children identical to his son? How to prove that there was no irregularity or crime behind it all? At that instant, Mama Rosa appeared silently at the elegant living room door, carefully carrying more nutritious food on a silver tray. She stopped short when she saw the three children embracing on the marble floor, and her experienced eyes filled with tears of understanding and maternal tenderness. "Mr. Damien," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "In all these long years working diligently in this house, I never saw Kael so genuinely happy and complete. It's as if he has finally found a fundamental part of himself that he didn't even consciously know he had lost. Mama Rosa, you can stay and lovingly care for them while I anxiously await the doctor's arrival. I urgently need to make some very important calls. Of course, Mr. Damien, I will care for the three of them as if they were my own grandchildren." Damien slowly climbed towards the elegant study on the second floor, but before reaching it, he heard melodious laughter coming from the main living room. It was a pure, crystal-clear sound he had never heard in his entire life. Kael laughing with full, unreserved joy without melancholy. During his beloved son's young life, Damien had always perceived a certain inexplicable sadness in the child, as if something essential was eternally missing from his existence. Now, upon hearing that spontaneous and authentic laughter, he understood with absolute clarity that Kael had always felt deep down the painful absence of his brothers, even though he was not consciously aware of their real existence. In the orderly silence of the study, Damien turned on the modern computer and meticulously began to investigate everything possible about Nadia Santos, Elena's problematic sister. He found detailed records of constant changes of address, some police reports for minor offenses, and a very worrying history of chronic financial instability. But what impressed him most was discovering that, mysteriously, Nadia had received a very significant sum of money from an unidentified source exactly at the precise time of the traumatic birth of the children. It was as if someone powerful had deliberately paid her to disappear with the babies and never return. Damien's growing suspicions immediately turned towards his own family. The Brooks had always been notoriously traditional, conservative, and obsessed with an impeccable public image. Having triplets in a complicated and unplanned pregnancy with the young mother tragically dying in childbirth could have been interpreted as a devastating scandal, something that had to be covered up at any cost. Perhaps his own authoritative and cold parents, Kael's conservative grandparents, had orchestrated that cruel and inhumane separation. Suddenly, the phone rang loudly, interrupting his gloomy thoughts. It was Dr. Harlan calling from his car. "Damien, I'm arriving in a few minutes. I brought absolutely everything necessary for the DNA tests, but I must warn you that the complete results will only be ready in exactly 3 days, Doctor. Harlan, in addition to the DNA, I need you to carefully examine the 2 children. They have lived abandoned on the street and may have developed serious health problems. Don't worry, I brought my complete medical kit. We will do a detailed evaluation of everything." When Damien calmly descended the marble stairs, he found a domestic scene that moved him more than anything in his adult life. Mama Rosa had lovingly prepared an impeccable snack on the elegant living room table, and the 3 children were sitting politely like little gentlemen, conversing animatedly about their dreams and future plans. There was a natural harmony between them that transcended all logic. "When I'm a doctor," Kael said with a sparkle in his green eyes, "I'm going to have a big hospital just to take care of poor children who don't have money. And I'm also going to be a doctor," Bennett completed with equal determination. "But I'm going to lovingly care for abandoned animals because they suffer just like people." "And I'm going to be a teacher," Declan said with admirable conviction, "to patiently teach children who never had the opportunity to really study." Damien was deeply impressed by the naturalness with which the 3 projected a joint and integrated future, as if they had always instinctively known that they would be united to face life. It was as if they shared not only genes, but also values, dreams, and an identical vision of the world. Dr. Harlan arrived punctually at the agreed time, carefully carrying 2 professional and heavy medical bags. He was a distinguished man of 60, with completely gray hair and elegant gold glasses that inspired immediate confidence and credibility. He had known Damien since their university days, and had professionally followed the devastating tragedy of Kael's birth and Elena's death. "Damien," Dr. Harlan said calmly, entering the living room, stopping short when he saw the three children gathered. "Merciful God, what an absolutely impossible resemblance is this? It's precisely about that inexplicable resemblance that I urgently need to talk to you," Damien replied with seriousness. "Doctor." Harlan approached the children cautiously with the typical care and natural delicacy of an experienced pediatrician who had dedicated decades to childcare. "Hello, dear children. I am Dr. Harlan, Kael's personal doctor for many years. You can affectionately call me Dr. Harlan." "Hello, doctor," Declan and Bennett said in unison with the impeccable manners Damien had already noticed and repeatedly admired. "I need to do some very simple medical examinations on you." "It's all right. It won't hurt at all. I promise." As the doctor meticulously examined the children with specialized instruments, Damien explained the entire complex situation in minute detail. "Doctor." Harlan listened attentively with growing astonishment and medical and ethical concern. "Damien, if all this is scientifically confirmed, we have before us an extremely delicate, illegal medical situation. These children were criminally deprived not only of their biological family, but also of adequate, irregular medical care." The detailed medical examination revealed that Declan and Bennett were visibly malnourished with mild but worrying anemia and some significant vitamin deficiencies. However, there was nothing that could not be completely reversed with adequate nutrition, nutritional supplementation, and regular medical care. "They will need intensive nutritional support and medical monitoring for the next 6 months, the doctor explained with professional seriousness. "But they are naturally strong and resilient children. With appropriate care, they will recover completely." The collection of material for the DNA test was surprisingly quick and painless. "Doctor." Harlan carefully took saliva samples from the three children with special sterile swabs. He meticulously labeled everything with specific codes and stored them in appropriate airtight containers. "Damien, I will personally take this precious material to the most reliable and discreet laboratory I know. In exactly 3 days, we will have definitive scientific confirmation." After the trusted doctor left, Damien calmly gathered the three children in the cozy living room for a serious and important conversation. "Children, I need to explain something very important so you understand well. There is a real possibility that you are biological brothers, but we must patiently wait for a scientific examination to officially confirm it. We already know with absolute certainty that we are brothers," Kael said with unshakable conviction. "No scientific examination is needed to confirm what we already feel. I know perfectly, my son, but adults and authorities need irrefutable scientific proof to make important legal decisions." "And if the exam says we are really brothers," Declan asked with visible anxiety, "will we be able to stay here in this house forever?" "If the result is positive, you three will never be separated again, not even for a single day. That is my most sacred promise." Bennett, who had remained thoughtful and silent throughout the conversation, finally spoke in a small but firm voice. "Mr. Damien, can we call you Papa?" "Really?" The innocent question was like an emotional blow to Damien's stomach. For his solitary years, only Kael had called him Papa. Hearing that sacred word from the mouth of a child he had met only a few hours ago awakened deep feelings he didn't even know existed in his heart. "You can call me exactly what you feel most comfortable with," he replied, his voice breaking with emotion. "Then you are our Papa from now on," Declan said with touching simplicity, "and we will never be alone or abandoned again." That special and transformative night, Damien carefully settled Declan and Bennett in luxurious rooms adjacent to Kael's, but the three children categorically insisted on sleeping all together in Kael's family room. "We slept apart our whole lives," Kael explained with touching seriousness. "Now we want to be close together to make up for lost time." Damien immediately accepted, deeply moved by their instinctive need to remain physically close after years of forced separation. He placed extra mattresses on the floor of Kael's room and organized a kind of cozy family camp. As the children quietly prepared for bed, Mama Rosa discreetly approached Damien with a serious expression. "Mr. Damien, can I tell you something important?" "Of course, Mama Rosa. Speak freely. I have worked diligently with children for more than 30 years of my life. I have seen many different and complex situations, But what happened here today in this house was God's work. These children recognized each other in a way that has no possible human explanation. Do you really believe they are genuinely brothers? Mr. Damien, I absolutely do not need a DNA test to be sure. It's enough to observe carefully how they behave naturally together. They are like three perfect pieces of a puzzle that finally fit into the right place. Before going to sleep, Damien quietly went to the children's room to wish them good night with affection. He found the three lying side by side on the mattresses with Kael strategically in the middle, firmly holding Declan's and Bennett's hands like a natural protector. "Papa," Kael whispered in the darkness, "thank you so much for finding my lost brothers." "Thank you for picking us up from the street," Declan whispered with infinite gratitude. "Thank you for not kicking us out," Bennett added, his voice full of emotion. Damien delicately kissed the foreheads of the three children, feeling an emotional and spiritual fullness he had never experienced in his entire adult life. "Good night, my beloved children. Sleep peacefully and safely. Papa is here, caring for you forever." Later, completely alone in his silent room, Damien determinedly called his mother, Mama Vivian Brooks, the authoritative matriarch of the traditional family. "Mama, I urgently need to tell you something extremely important. What happened now, Damien? Did something serious happen to Kael?" "Kael is perfectly fine. But today I found two abandoned children who might be my biological sons." There was a long and significant silence on the other end of the line. "How is that exactly, Damien? Two children absolutely identical to Kael?" "Mama, you are completely delirious. Kael was always an only child. There were absolutely no other babies at birth." "Mama, I clearly remember confused fragments of that traumatic birth. I remember the doctors speaking urgently about difficult decisions, about saving whoever was humanly possible. And these children know intimate details that they could only know if they had really been born in that specific hospital on that exact day. That is completely impossible and absurd. If there had been other babies, I would have known everything." "You knew perfectly well, Mama." "Now I am absolutely certain of that, and I want to know immediately what exactly happened to my disappeared children." The silence that followed was deafening and laden with tension. Damien could clearly hear his mother's heavy, irregular breathing on the other end of the line. "Damien, come to the house first thing tomorrow morning. We urgently need to talk in person about all this. Why exactly can't you tell me right now? Because it is an extremely delicate conversation that must be had face to face. And bring the children with you. I need to see them with my own eyes." Hanging up the phone with trembling hands, Damien remained awake all night, staring out the wide window and obsessively thinking about everything that had happened on that absolutely extraordinary and transformative day. In less than 12 intense hours, his life had changed completely and irreversibly. From a solitary father of an only child, he had become the dedicated father of triplets. From a man with a small, controlled family, he had become responsible for three children who desperately needed care, unconditional love, and permanent protection. But the most painful thing of all was discovering that for 5 long years he had lived an elaborate and cruel lie. His other two biological children had not died at birth, as he had always sincerely believed. They had been deliberately taken away, criminally hidden, and raised away from him for sinister reasons he still did not fully understand. Through the silent window, Damien could see the first golden ray of sun majestically rising on the horizon. A new day was slowly dawning, and with it the concrete promise of definitive answers to questions that had tormented him for years. "Tomorrow, finally, we will know the complete truth," he murmured to himself, thinking tenderly of the three children sleeping peacefully in the next room, finally reunited after 5 cruel years of forced and unnecessary separation. The morning arrived sooner than expected, heralded by the soft noises of the children stirring in the adjoining room. It was barely 6 in the morning when Damien heard low laughs and whispered conversations coming from Kael's room. He got up silently and, peering through the half-open door, observed a scene that filled him with tenderness and melancholy at the same time. The three were sitting in a circle on the floor, still in pajamas, sharing biscuits Kael had hidden in a drawer. Declan was teaching Bennett a hand game while Kael watched attentively, also trying to learn. It was as if that morning they were making up for years of lost games. "Good morning, boys," Damien said, entering the room with a genuine smile. "Did you sleep well?" "Papa, it was the best night of my life," Kael replied immediately. "I dreamed we were flying together in the sky." "I also dreamed we were flying," Declan added, astonished. "And there was a beautiful woman smiling at us from the sky." Damien felt a shiver run down his spine. Elena had always said that when she died, she wanted to fly free like a bird. Could it be that the children had dreamed of the mother they never knew? "And I dreamed we lived in a big house with a garden full of flowers," Bennett completed, "and we had a brown dog that played with us." Damien almost stumbled. Before Elena's death, they had planned to buy a golden retriever to accompany the baby that was about to be born, a dream he had never mentioned to Kael. At that moment, Mama Rosa appeared at the door with a tray of hot chocolate and fresh puff-puffs. "Good morning, my little angels. Have a good breakfast because today will be an important day." While the children were having breakfast, Damien received an unexpected call. It was Attorney Vance, his lawyer, calling earlier than expected. "Damien, I need to talk to you urgently. Something serious happened overnight." "What was it, Vance?" "The police received an anonymous tip about child abduction. Someone said you were holding 2 children in your house against their will." Damien felt his blood run cold. "Abduction? Those children were abandoned on the street." "I know, but the report was filed, and now Child Protection Services wants to pay a visit. They could arrive at any moment." "Vance, those children are my sons. I'm sure they are." "Damien, but until we have the DNA proof, legally they are still missing minors. You need to cooperate fully with the authorities." After hanging up, Damien gathered the children in the living room. He had to prepare them for what might happen. "Boys, today, some important people might come to ask you questions. I want you to always tell the truth, okay?" "What kind of questions?" Declan asked, perceiving the concern in Damien's voice. "About how you got here, how you feel, if anyone forced you to stay." "No one forced us," Bennett said firmly. "We chose to stay because this is our home." Then Kael approached his father and took his hand. "Papa, they won't separate us, will they? I'll do everything possible to ensure that doesn't happen, my son." At 9 in the morning, 2 cars stopped in front of the mansion. From the first descended a social worker, a psychologist, and a representative from Child Protection Services. From the second, 2 uniformed police officers emerged. Damien opened the door before they rang the doorbell. "Good morning. I imagine you are here because of the children," said the social worker, a middle-aged woman with glasses and a rigid posture. "I am Mrs. Alicia Bennett from Child Protection Services. We received a report about 2 children who are allegedly being held in your residence. The children are not being held. They are being cared for because I found them abandoned on the street. Even so, we need to speak with them separately to assess the situation." Damien agreed, but asked to accompany the interviews. The psychologist, Dr. Sophia, was more understanding than the social worker. "Mr. Damien, we will speak with the children together first and then individually. It's important that they feel comfortable." The 3 little ones were led to the living room where they sat side by side on the large sofa. The resemblance between them did not go unnoticed by anyone. "My God," one of the police officers murmured to his partner, "they look like identical triplets." Dr. Sophia knelt in front of them. "Hello, children. I am Dr. Sophia, and I came to talk with you. Can you tell me how you came to this house?" Kael replied first. "My papa and I were coming home from school when we saw Declan and Bennett sleeping on the street. I told my papa they looked like me." "And you wanted to come here?" the psychologist asked Declan and Bennett. "Yes," Declan replied without hesitation. "Kael said this would also be our home. Are you happy here?" "Very happy," Bennett said. "For the first time in our lives, we have a real family." The social worker intervened with a more severe tone. "Children, do you know that you can't stay with strangers? Where are the adults who used to care for you?" "Auntie Nadia left us on the street and never came back," Declan explained. "She told us she was going to find us a new family." But she lied. "And who is this Auntie Nadia?" "She was our mother's sister," Bennett replied. "But she didn't really like taking care of us." For 2 hours, the officials asked detailed questions, spoke with the children individually, with Damien, and also with Mama Rosa. The housekeeper was essential in clarifying the situation. "Doctor," Mama Rosa said to the psychologist, "I have worked with children for over 30 years. These little ones are not being coerced or mistreated. On the contrary, I have never seen children so happy and integrated, but the resemblance between them is impressive," the social worker observed. "How do you explain that?" "I explain it because they are brothers," Damien stated firmly. "We have already collected samples for the DNA test. In 2 days, we will have confirmation. Until then, the children must remain under state guardianship," the social worker declared. "It's standard procedure." "No," Kael shouted, jumping up from the sofa. "You can't take my brothers." Declan and Bennett began to cry, clinging to Kael. "Please, don't separate us again," Declan pleaded. The psychologist observed the reaction with professional attention. "Dr. Alicia, these children have a very strong emotional bond. Separating them now could cause psychological trauma. But the protocol must consider the well-being of the children," the psychologist interrupted. "I suggest they remain here under supervision until the DNA results." After a long discussion, the officials reached a temporary agreement. The children could stay with Damien, but there would be daily visits from Child Protection Services, and the situation would be constantly reevaluated. "Mr. Damien," the social worker said before leaving, "any irregularity in the children will be immediately removed." After the authorities left, Damien embraced the three. "Everything will be fine. In 2 days, we will have proof that they are brothers." "Papa," Kael said, "why do some people want to separate families?" "Sometimes, Kael, people don't understand that family isn't just about sharing the same last name, but about those who truly love each other." That afternoon, Damien decided to take the children to visit Mama Vivian. It was time to face the past and discover the truth of what happened years ago. The Brooks mansion was in an even more luxurious neighborhood with immense gardens and imposing architecture. Upon arrival, Mama Vivian waited on the terrace, elegantly dressed as always. Seeing the 3 children get out of the car, her expression changed drastically. "My God," she murmured, bringing her hand to her chest. "How is this possible?" "Hello, Mama Vivian," Kael said, running to hug her. "I brought my brothers for you to meet." Mama Vivian stared at Declan and Bennett as if she were seeing ghosts. Her hands trembled visibly. "Damien," she said, her voice choked, "we need to talk immediately." "First, I want you to meet Declan and Bennett," Damien replied, bringing the 2 children closer. "Children, this is Mama Vivian, Papa's mother." "Hello, Grandma," they said shyly. Mama Vivian knelt in front of them, observing every detail of their faces. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. "They are identical to Kael when he was a baby," she whispered. "And they are also identical to Elena." Damien understood that his mother knew more than she had revealed. "Mama, do you recognize these children?" Mama Vivian slowly stood up, wiping her tears. "Damien, send the children to play in the garden. We need to talk about things they shouldn't hear yet. Children, go play outside. Mama Rosa will go with you." When the little ones left, Mama Vivian sat heavily in an armchair. "Damien, sit down. What I'm about to tell you will change everything you believe about that terrible night." Damien sat across from his mother, prepared to hear what he had suspected for years. "Mama, I want to know exactly what happened at the hospital." "Damien, you have to understand the context. Elena was dying. There were 3 premature babies, and the doctors said they couldn't save them all." "Continue." "Your father and I made a terrible decision that night. We decided it was better to save 1 strong baby than to lose all 3. Damien fed on Damien's chest. You chose Kael and abandoned my other children. We didn't abandon them. Nadia offered to take care of the other 2. We thought it would be best. And you never told me? Damien, you were devastated by Elena's death. We believed it would be best not to complicate your grief even further." "Complicate? Mama, you stole 2 children from me. You made me live years believing they were dead." Mama Vivian began to cry. "Damien, I'm sorry. We thought we were doing what was best for everyone. The best? And where was Nadia all these years? Why did she abandon the children? Nadia? Nadia developed drug problems. We lost all contact with her. Damien got up, pacing the room with growing rage. You destroyed these children's lives. They could have grown up with me, with love and care. Damien, it was a decision made in desperation. It was a criminal decision. Damien stopped in front of his mother. Now I want you to help me fix this situation. I want all the documents, all the papers related to the birth of the three. Mama Vivian nodded, crying. Damien, there's something else you need to know. What else? The babies were not only born prematurely, they were born with a rare genetic condition that could cause them health problems in the future. Damien shuddered. What kind of problems? Heart problems. All three might need corrective surgery when they are older. And you also hid that? The doctor said Kael was fine for now. And the other two, you preferred to die far from me. Mama Vivian could not respond. Damien left the living room and went to look for the children in the garden. He found the three playing happily with Mama Rosa, completely oblivious to the traumatic conversation that had taken place. Children, let's go home, Damien said, trying to control his emotion. Did we already meet Grandma? Kael asked. And she loves them very much, just like me. On the way home, Kael noticed his father was restless. Papa, Mama Vivian said something sad. Damien took a deep breath before answering. Kael, sometimes adults make very serious mistakes trying to protect those they love. Mama Vivian made a mistake a long time ago, but now we are going to fix everything, and we will stay together forever, my son. Nothing and no one will separate you again. That night, while the children slept, Damien received an unexpected call. It was Dr. Harlan. Damien, I urgently need to speak with you. It's about the children's examinations. Any problem, Damien? I found something in the blood tests that you need to know immediately. Damien's heart accelerated violently upon hearing Dr. Harlan's extremely concerned and grave tone. There was something in the way the doctor, always experienced and composed, spoke that awakened a primitive and devastating fear in the businessman's chest. During the last 2 intense and emotionally exhausting days, Damien had experienced a roller coaster of emotions, quickly moving from the overwhelming joy of reuniting with his children, whom he believed lost forever, the paralyzing terror of losing them again to the competent authorities. And now he faced the terrifying possibility that something much more complex, sinister, and disturbing was happening in his life. Dr. Harlan? What specific type of medical problem did you find in the children's examinations? Damien asked, desperately trying to keep his voice steady while feeling his hands tremble involuntarily like leaves in the wind. Damien, I prefer not to discuss this over the phone. It's an extremely delicate, complex, and potentially dangerous matter that needs to be explained in detail in person. I can stop by your house right now. The children have been sleeping deeply for several hours. Wouldn't it be better to talk early tomorrow? Damien, this cannot wait until tomorrow. It's about their critical health and something extremely disturbing I discovered in the old medical records I was able to access through special contacts at the hospital. A chilling and terrifying shiver ran through Damien's entire body. Medical records? Which specific records? Complete and detailed records of Elena's traumatic delivery. There is crucial information there that completely contradicts everything you believe you know about that terrible night. Doctor, you are frightening and distressing me greatly. What exactly are you talking about? I'll be at your house in exactly 20 minutes. Prepare yourself mentally and emotionally, because what I am about to reveal will radically and irreversibly change your understanding of everything that occurred. Damien hung up with trembling hands, as if he had received an electric shock. He slowly went up to the children's room and watched them sleep peacefully, hugging each other, as they instinctively always did every night. Kael was in the middle, naturally protecting Declan and Bennett with his small but determined arms. They were a moving image of pure innocence and genuine fraternal love that contrasted drastically with the growing storm of uncertainty and terror in Damien's turbulent mind. Exactly 20 minutes later, Dr. Harlan arrived punctually, carrying a voluminous and heavy folder, and with a somber and worried expression that Damien had never seen on his normally kind and reassuring face. There was something deeply unsettling in the doctor's demeanor, a palpable tension that put Damien on high alert. "Damien, let's go immediately to your private office. We need total privacy for this extremely delicate conversation." In the silent and isolated study, Dr. Harlan carefully placed the folder on the mahogany table and slowly opened it, revealing old medical documents, complex laboratory analyses, and yellowish photographs that Damien did not immediately recognize but which felt disturbingly familiar. "Damien, first I want you to sit comfortably and prepare yourself mentally and emotionally for what I am about to reveal. It is an extremely complex, delicate, and potentially explosive medical and ethical situation. Doctor, please get straight to the point. I am literally desperate with worry and anxiety." "Very well. First, the blood tests definitively confirmed my initial medical suspicions. Declan and Bennett have exactly the same rare congenital heart condition as Kael. It is an extremely rare genetic anomaly that affects approximately 1 in every 100,000 births." Damien momentarily breathed a sigh of relief, feeling some tension leave his shoulders. "So, they really are my biological sons. The DNA test will scientifically confirm that." "Damien, here's the devastating problem. The DNA will probably confirm that they are biological brothers, but it may not confirm that you are their direct biological father." "How is that?" "I don't understand anything." "Doctor." Harlan carefully took out an old and yellowish document from the folder. "This is the complete and detailed medical report of Elena's traumatic delivery that I was able to access through special and confidential contacts at the hospital. Damien, that terrible night was much more complicated and disturbing than you remember or were led to believe. A serious and inexplicable medical emergency occurred. She began to have violent convulsions and massive internal bleeding that doctors could not adequately control." Damien leaned forward, obsessively listening to every crucial word. The experienced doctors performed an emergency C-section to save Kael and desperately try to save Elena, but during the surgery, they discovered something completely unexpected and scientifically disturbing. "What exactly did they discover, doctor?" "There were 2 more developed children in Elena's uterus, but they were not biologically hers." Damien froze. How were they not hers? She was visibly pregnant for months. "Damien, this will seem impossible and absurd, but the medical evidence is irrefutable and scientifically documented. Elena suffered what we doctors call superfetation, an extremely rare condition in which a pregnant woman ovulates again and becomes pregnant again during the same existing gestation. Is that really possible?" "Yes, it is possible, but extraordinarily rare. It occurs when a woman ovulates during an already established pregnancy and has sexual relations with another man or through artificial intervention." Damien felt the world crumble around him. "Are you directly telling me that Elena cheated on me with another man, not necessarily a voluntary betrayal? There is another, even more disturbing possibility." "Doctor," Harlan carefully took out detailed medical photographs from the folder. "These are technical photos of the surgical procedure performed that night. The 2 children found in Elena's uterus were approximately 2 weeks less developed fetally than Kael." "And what does that scientifically mean?" Damien asked. "It means they were conceived exactly 2 weeks after Kael." "But Damien, here's the most disturbing and terrifying part. These children had physical and genetic characteristics that strongly suggest they were not conceived naturally at all." "How not naturally?" "Explain in detail, doctor." "There is irrefutable medical evidence that these children were the direct result of advanced artificial insemination or clandestine in vitro fertilization. Someone with specialized medical knowledge implanted artificially developed embryos into Elena's uterus without her or your knowledge or consent." Damien stood up abruptly, pacing nervously around the room in complete and devastating shock. "This is absolute madness. Who would do something so monstrous and cruel?" "Damien, that's exactly the question that kept me awake all night. Who had regular physical access to Elena? Who knew her medical condition in detail? Who would significantly benefit from such a complex situation? Doctor, Are you insinuating that someone from my own family, I am stating that someone with considerable resources, deliberately and coldly orchestrated this entire situation? And that person definitely had substantial financial resources and direct access to extremely advanced medical technology. Damien stopped abruptly and stared at the doctor. Nadia. Nadia was always present at the hospital, asking specific and detailed medical questions. Nadia could have been an important piece in the scheme, but definitely not the main mastermind behind everything. She simply did not have the financial resources or the technical knowledge for something so sophisticated and complex. Then who exactly? Damien asked. Dr. Harlan hesitated before answering cautiously. Damien, I need to ask you an extremely difficult and delicate question. Your family always showed an obsessive interest in having more direct heirs. My parents always desperately wanted more grandchildren. But Damien, what if someone influential in your family coldly decided to artificially create more heirs through genetic manipulation? The suggestion was so absurd and disturbing that Damien had to sit down again, dizzy. Doctor, this sounds like something out of an impossible science fiction movie. Damien, the medical technology for this perfectly existed years ago, and your family possesses the financial resources and influential medical connections to carry out something exactly like this. But why would they do something so drastic without telling me absolutely anything? Perhaps because they knew perfectly well that you would never voluntarily accept it, or because they wanted to have total and absolute control over those artificially created children. Damien ran his hands through his hair nervously, trying to process information that completely defied his basic understanding of reality. Even if this is true, these children are completely innocent. They desperately need adequate medical care and unconditional love. I fully agree, but Damien, there are more serious medical complications. If these children were really artificially created using manipulated genetic material from your family, they may have other serious health problems still undetected in the initial examinations. I need to do much more detailed and specific tests. What kind of medical problems? Degenerative neurological problems, severe immunological deficiencies, or even significantly reduced life expectancy? Children created through experimental genetic manipulation can have unpredictable and devastating long-term consequences. Damien felt intense nausea growing in his stomach. Are you directly telling me that Declan and Bennett could be seriously ill? I'm saying that we need to investigate much more deeply and quickly. And Damien, there is something else extremely important that you need to know immediately. What else could there be, Doctor? Harlan pulled the last crucial document from the folder. This is a detailed financial report that I was able to obtain through confidential contacts. Someone paid exactly 2 million naira to a clandestine fertilization clinic precisely during Elena's pregnancy. 2 million naira. Damien, this was definitely not an accident or an emotional betrayal. It was a meticulously planned medical project executed with absolute surgical precision. Doctor, I need to confront my family immediately. Damien, wait calmly. Before confronting anyone, we need to have absolutely all the irrefutable evidence. And most importantly, we must guarantee the physical safety of the children. Safety? Why would they be in real danger? If someone invested 2 million naira to artificially create these children, they may desperately want to recover their investment. Recover how exactly? Forced legal custody, total control over their lives, or even worse scenarios. Damien felt a primitive panic completely seize his chest. Doctor, these children are not scientific experiments or financial investments. They are my beloved sons. Damien, in your heart they are definitely your children, but legally, the situation can be much more complicated and dangerous than we imagine. What exactly should I do? First, we will do completely detailed genetic tests on Declan and Bennett. Second, we will discreetly investigate who funded this sinister project. Third, we will prepare an absolutely solid legal defense. And while that happens, you take care of these children as the loving father they deserve, because regardless of how they came into the world, they desperately need unconditional love and protection. Damien looked out the window at the room where his 3 sons slept peacefully. Doctor, even knowing all this, I could not love these children more than I love them now. Damien, that makes you a truly honorable man. But mentally prepare yourself, because when this truth completely comes to light, there will be influential people who will try to use this situation against you. What kind of people? People who believe that artificially created children do not deserve the same legal rights as naturally conceived ones. That is completely absurd and inhumane. Damien, you and I know it's absurd, but society isn't always rational when it comes to ethical issues like this. Damien stood up and walked to the window, watching the full moon illuminate the garden where his 3 sons had played happily hours earlier. Dr. Harlan, regardless of how Declan and Bennett came into the world, they are now my children, and I will fight to the death to protect them. Damien, I will help you in absolutely every possible way, but you must understand that this fight may be more difficult than you imagine. Why exactly? Because if my theory is correct, there are extremely powerful people involved in this situation. People who will not easily yield the control they believe they have over these children. Who would those influential people be, Doctor? Harlan carefully put the documents back in the folder and looked directly into Damien's eyes. Damien, according to everything I have discovered, I firmly believe that your own family is at the absolute center of this elaborate conspiracy. And tomorrow, when you confront your mother with these devastating proofs, you will discover how far they are capable of going to keep their darkest secrets. Dr. Harlan's devastating words resonated in the silent office like a death sentence, leaving Damien completely paralyzed and without immediate emotional reaction. The revelation that his own respected family could be involved in such an elaborate, sinister, and inhumane conspiracy to genetically manipulate the artificial creation of children challenged absolutely everything he had firmly believed about the people he had loved, respected, and admired throughout his adult life. The betrayal did not come from strangers or known enemies, but from the closest people in whom he had placed absolute trust and unconditional love. During the night of insomnia and torture that followed, Damien remained rigidly seated in his Italian leather armchair, staring fixedly out the wide window as he obsessively processed the devastating and incomprehensible information he had received. Every time he closed his exhausted eyes, he clearly saw the angelic faces of Declan and Bennett sleeping peacefully, completely oblivious and innocent to the fact that their very existences could be the direct result of a cruel and calculated scientific experiment, coldly orchestrated by people who should naturally protect and love them unconditionally. The disturbing idea that these pure and innocent children were considered commercial products, financial investments, or scientific experiments by someone from his own family filled him with a cold, calculating, and relentless anger that he had never experienced before in his entire existence. It was a fury that transcended common rage, transforming into something more primitive and dangerous. At 5 a.m, when the first golden rays of sun began to illuminate the distant horizon, Damien heard the first melodious sounds coming from the children's room. Low and crystal clear laughs, whispered and joyful conversations as magically happened every time the 3 naturally woke up. He got up silently and walked with careful steps to the half-open door, observing once again the moving scene that had become precious and sacred in his daily routine. Kael was patiently teaching Declan and Bennett how to make colorful paper airplanes from pages of a children's magazine, and the 3 were amicably competing to see which would fly farthest across the spacious room. The absolute naturalness with which they interacted, the perfect synchronization of their movements, and the genuine joy on their angelic faces contrasted brutally with the disturbing and terrifying revelations of the previous night. "Good morning, my beloved children," Damien said, calmly entering the room with a forced but loving smile, desperately trying to hide the devastating emotional storm that was violently raging inside his tortured being. "Did you sleep well and peacefully, Papa?" "We dreamed exactly the same thing again," Kael said, with a brilliant enthusiasm in his green eyes. "All 3 of us dreamed we were on a beautiful, sunny beach, playing happily in the white sand with a beautiful woman with long, silky hair, and she was singing us a very beautiful and melancholic song." "Yes," Declan completed with a dreamy expression, "a song that felt like we already knew from somewhere far away and special." Bennett nodded enthusiastically, adding specific details that sent a shiver down Damien's spine. The beautiful woman had green eyes exactly like ours, and she affectionately told us that she had always cared for us with great love, even when we didn't consciously know it. Damien immediately recognized, without the slightest doubt, the detailed description. It was Elena, just as she often appeared in his own nostalgic dreams during the painful first years after her premature death. The deep and inexplicable spiritual connection between the three children and the mother they never personally knew was something that transcended any known scientific, medical, or rational explanation, a phenomenon that defied logic and touched the realm of the supernatural. "Dear children," Damien said, sitting affectionately on the floor with them, "today we are going to have a very special and important day. We are going to visit Mama Vivian again, and then perhaps make some other very important visits for our family." "Are we going to meet more interesting relatives?" Declan asked with genuine curiosity and bright eyes full of expectation. "Perhaps you will meet some relatives and perhaps discover very important things about yourselves and about our family," Damien replied. Mama Rosa appeared silently at the door, carefully carrying an elegant tray with breakfast, specially prepared with love and attention. "Good morning, my beloved angels. Today, I prepared special pancakes with honey, exactly how you like them best." While the children happily ate breakfast in the luxurious dining room, Damien received an urgent call from his personal lawyer, Attorney Vance. "Damien, I have extremely important news about the detailed financial investigation you requested. I have obtained very interesting and revealing documents about suspicious financial transactions by your family in the last years." "What kind of suspicious transactions?" Damien asked. "Substantial irregular transfers to officially unregistered medical clinics, significant payments to private and clandestine genetics laboratories, and a considerable amount discreetly deposited in an offshore account in Nadia Santos's name." Damien felt his stomach painfully clench with the confirmation of his worst suspicions. "Vance, I urgently need you to come to my house today. We have a lot to discuss in detail." "Damien, there is something else extremely important and disturbing. Nadia Santos was found dead last night in a cheap and dirty hotel in the city center. Apparently, it was a drug overdose, but there are suspicious circumstances." The news hit Damien like a devastating lightning bolt. Nadia was dead, taking with her all the crucial secrets about what had really happened with Declan and Bennett during the first formative years of their lives. "Vance, this cannot be a mere coincidence." "Damien, I completely agree. Someone powerful didn't want her to talk. We need to act very quickly to protect these innocent children." After hanging up the phone with trembling hands, Damien watched the three children playing happily in the luxurious living room, completely unaware of the real dangers that surrounded them like invisible predators. Nadia's convenient death definitely confirmed his worst suspicions. There were influential people willing to do anything to keep the dark secrets about the artificial origin of Declan and Bennett. At 10 in the morning, Damien carefully loaded the three children into the Lexus and drove with determination to his mother's imposing mansion. During the silent journey through the city's busy streets, he mentally prepared the difficult and confrontational questions he needed to ask. This time, he would not accept diplomatic evasions, convenient half-truths, or elaborate lies. He desperately needed the complete and raw truth, no matter how disturbing, shocking, or devastating it was for his understanding of reality. Mama Vivian waited patiently on the elegant terrace, but her posture was visibly different and worrying. She seemed physically more fragile, older, and more tired, as if she had aged several years in a single torturous night. As she saw the car slowly approach, her expression transformed into a complex mixture of deep guilt, genuine fear, and fatalistic resignation. "Mama Vivian!" Kael shouted with enthusiasm, running to hug her as soon as he energetically got out of the car. Declan and Bennett followed immediately, but with more instinctive caution, intuitively perceiving that something fundamental had changed in the respected elderly woman's behavior. "Hello, my dear and precious ones," Mama Vivian said, her voice completely choked with emotion, embracing the three children with a desperate and almost suffocating intensity. "Every day, you are more handsome, intelligent, and similar to each other." Damien observed the interaction with obsessive attention, noticing how his mother held the children as if it were the last time she would see them in her entire life. "Mother, can we speak alone immediately?" "Mama Rosa, you can stay and lovingly care for the children in the garden." "Damien, first of all, I desperately need to ask for your forgiveness, sincere forgiveness for everything we did, for all the elaborate lies, for all the unnecessary suffering we caused." Damien felt a complex mixture of temporary relief and growing terror. His mother was finally ready to confess everything, but the confession could be much more terrible and devastating than he had ever imagined, even in his worst nightmares. In the elegant study of the mansion, Mama Vivian sat heavily in her favorite velvet armchair, suddenly seeming much older than her well-lived years. "Damien, sit comfortably. What I am about to tell you will completely destroy everything you believe about our respected family. Mother, I already know that you were directly involved in the artificial creation of Declan and Bennett. What I desperately need to know is exactly why you did it." Mama Vivian sighed deeply, as if gathering all possible courage to reveal the darkest and most shameful secret of her life. "Damien, when Elena became naturally pregnant with Kael, we discovered through detailed examinations that she had a rare genetic condition that could be hereditarily transmitted to the child." "What specific condition?" "A genetic predisposition to severe congenital heart problems. Specialists categorically said there was a 50% chance that Kael would be born with serious and potentially fatal health problems." Damien leaned forward intensely, paying obsessive attention to every crucial word. "Continue with all the details." "Your father and I were completely desperate and terrified. The Brooks lineage had always been characterized by robust health and exceptional longevity. The terrifying idea of having a sick and fragile heir was completely unacceptable to us." "Then what exactly did you do?" "We discreetly contacted a renowned scientist, Professor Nathan Everett, a world specialist in advanced genetic manipulation. He proposed a revolutionary experimental solution." "What specific solution?" "To create 2 genetically modified and enhanced children who would be perfectly compatible with Kael for eventual organ transplants, but who would also have genetically corrected versions of the problematic genes." Damien felt nausea growing violently in his stomach. "You created Declan and Bennett as spare parts for Kael." "It wasn't that simple or cruel, Damien. Professor Everett personally assured us that the children would be completely healthy and normal, only with some significant genetic improvements." "What kind of genetic improvements?" "Greater natural resistance to diseases, increased intelligence, prolonged longevity. It was like giving this an objectively better life." "And how did you implant the artificial embryos in Elena?" Mama Vivian visibly hesitated, struggling intensely with overwhelming guilt. "During a routine prenatal consultation, Professor Everett subtly manipulated Elena and implanted the modified embryos. She never knew what had really happened. You criminally violated my wife's body without her consent." "Damien, we sincerely thought we were doing what was best for everyone. Elena would have more children, and Kael would have brothers who could save him if necessary. And when she tragically died in childbirth, it was a completely unforeseen complication. Professor Everett said it had no relation whatsoever to the experimental procedure. And Nadia, what exactly was her role?" "Nadia agreed to take care of the 2 children in exchange for a considerable sum. She would be like a surrogate mother until they were needed. Needed for what exactly? To save Kael if he developed heart problems, or to continue the family line with improved genes." Damien stood up abruptly, pacing nervously around the room with growing and uncontrollable anger. "Mother, you transformed innocent children into merchandise. They are not products or tools." "Damien, I know it seems terrible now, but at that moment we thought we could play God with human lives." Mama Vivian began to cry copiously. "Damien, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything, but you need to understand that we did it out of love. Love for you, love for Kael, love for the family. Love, Mother. That wasn't love. It was pure and cruel selfishness." "Damien, there's something else you need to know about Declan and Bennett." "What else?" "They weren't created only with your genes. Professor Everett used genetic material from various sources to create perfect profiles." Damien stopped pacing, feeling the world violently spin. From what other sources? Genes from individuals with superior intelligence, Olympic athletes, people with exceptional longevity. They are like a compilation of the best human traits available. So they aren't even my biological sons? Biologically, approximately 60% of their genes are yours. The rest were artificially selected. Damien had to lean on the table to keep from completely fainting. Where's that Professor Everett now? He died in a car accident 2 years ago. And last night, and Nadia, I already know about Nadia. Conveniently, all those people who knew the truth are disappearing. Damien, it wasn't what, Mother? It wasn't planned. It wasn't convenient for the witnesses to disappear. Mama Vivian remained silent, her expression confirming Damien's worst suspicions. Mother, who else knows about this? Only your Auntie Fiona and I. Your father died taking the secret. Auntie Fiona knew? She helped finance the project? Yes. She was the one who found Professor Everett. Damien felt he was uncovering a much deeper family conspiracy than he imagined. Where's Auntie Fiona now? She traveled to Europe last night. She said she needed to get away for a while. Fleeing, you mean? Damien looked at the children through the window, seeing Kael teach Declan and Bennett how to climb the big tree in the garden. Mother, you lost the right to be the family of these children the moment you decided to create them as pieces of a game. Damien's final words resonated in the study like a definitive sentence, forever closing the family ties that had been built for decades. Mama Vivian remained silent for long minutes, absorbing the magnitude of the rupture her actions had caused. The weight of guilt seemed physical, curving her shoulders and further aging her face, already marked by remorse. Damien approached the window and watched the 3 children in the garden, completely oblivious to the conversation that was sealing their fates. Kael had managed to climb the tree and was helping Declan do the same, while Bennett cheered them on from below. The scene was one of pure innocence, a stark contrast to the sinister complexity of their origins. Mama Vivian, Damien said finally, his voice broken. I know I cannot undo what we have done. I know I have lost the right to be these children's grandmother, but at least allow me to contribute financially to their care. Money. Damien turned to look at her, his eyes shining with coldness. Do you think money can compensate for what you did? I know it cannot, but at least I can ensure they have everything they need. They will have everything through my work and my love. I don't want a single naira from that money used to finance that aberration, Damien retorted. Mama Vivian lowered her head, accepting the refusal. And if something happens to you, she asked, if they need care that you cannot provide them, they will have Mama Rosa who genuinely loves them. They will have Dr. Harlan who is committed to caring for them. They will have people who see them as human beings, not as experiments, Damien replied. Mama Vivian walked to an old drawer where she kept important documents. Damien, is there anything else you need to know? She said, pulling out a sealed folder. These are all the medical documents related to the procedure. Everything Professor Everett documented, all the examinations, all the specific modifications that were made. Damien took the folder reluctantly. Why are you giving me this now? Because if something happens to me, you will need this. Auntie Fiona remained in Europe, sending only occasional cards. Auntie Fiona remained in Europe, sending an annual letter full of remorse. A year later, Damien hosted a family reunion party, inviting only the people who truly mattered. During dinner, he made a toast. This celebration marks not only our first year together, but the fact that families are formed in unexpected and miraculous ways. The years passed peacefully. The 3 children grew up as an inseparable unit, developing unique personalities, but maintaining an unbreakable bond. Kael became the natural leader, Declan the brilliant academic, and Bennett the sensitive artist. Damien watched their development with pride, noting that the genetic enhancements subtly manifested. Exceptional intelligence, resistance to diseases, impressive emotional maturity. But he decided it didn't matter if it was the result of modifications or simply the unconditional love he had created for them. Upon turning 10, Damien finally felt confident enough to talk about Elena, showing photos and telling stories about the mother who still appeared in the children's shared dreams. By 15, they had become exceptional young men. Kael showed interest in medicine. Declan became passionate about scientific research and Bennett emerged as a talented artist. Damien supported them unconditionally, always reminding them that their choices should be motivated by passion, not by expectations about their enhanced abilities. Mama Rosa and Dr. Harlan remained central figures in the family, offering constant love and guidance. Damien kept the original medical documents locked away, rarely consulting them, accepting that his son's identity transcended their artificial origins. Upon turning 18, Damien offered to show them the complete documents. To his surprise, all three unanimously declined. "Papa," Kael said, "we know we were created in a special way, but that's history. What matters is who we are now and who we choose to be." In the following years, the three pursued different but parallel paths. Kael became a pediatric cardiologist, Declan earned a doctorate in bioethics, focusing on genetic manipulation, and Bennett transformed into a recognized artist. All married, started families, and maintained the unique bond of childhood. Damien aged gracefully, surrounded by an extended family that included his 3 sons, their wives, and eventually 7 grandchildren. Mama Rosa and Dr. Harlan remained with the family until their last days, beloved as the pillars they truly were. When Damien was 70 years old, his sons organized a party to celebrate the 25th anniversary of their reunion. During the celebration, Kael gave an emotional speech. "Papa, you could have walked away that day, but you chose to stop, to listen, and to love. You taught us that family isn't about genes, but about choosing to love and build something beautiful together." Damien looked at his reunited family, 3 exceptional sons, their families, and all the people who chose to be part of this common story. He thought about the scientific origins that had become irrelevant in the face of the simple reality that they were complete human beings capable of loving and finding meaning in their lives. The story had begun with manipulation and lies, but it ended with love and family. That night, Damien slept peacefully, knowing that he had fulfilled the most important promise of his life. And for the first time since that day on the street, he didn't dream of the past, but of the bright future his sons would continue to build together. Did you like today's story? Then subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and tell us in the comments below which city you are watching this video from.